My name is Madeline Grant. And on the morning my younger sister sent out her wedding invitations, I didn't get one addressed to me. It didn't say Madeline. It didn't say Maddie. The envelope waiting outside my penthouse door simply read, "To the elder sister of the bride." That told me everything. For them, I wasn't Madeline Grant, founder of NovaCore, architect of the technology they quietly relied on. I was just the shadow behind someone else's spotlight. The plus one without a name. But what they didn't know as they planned their perfect day was that I already held the contract that could decide the future of CrossTech, the very company they were counting on to secure their image, their money, their legacy. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was patient, precise. Because power doesn't always announce itself with applause or headlines. Sometimes it waits in silence until the moment it's needed most. Before I share how that moment unfolded, if you've ever felt like the invisible one in your own family, the person they only call when they need something, leave a comment below. Thank you for listening and for giving me a few quiet minutes of your time. Now, let me take you back to where it really began. It arrived on a Wednesday morning, pristine and smug, resting atop a silver tray outside my penthouse door. No postage stamp. Hand-delivered probably by one of the planners Samantha had hired to make the wedding feel personal. I stared at the gold-embossed script fingers hesitating on the seal, as if my name might appear the second time I looked. It didn't. I took it inside, set it down on the edge of my white quartz kitchen island, and walked away. I tried to ignore it, but the envelope sat there like a wound, quiet, pulsing, undeniable. When I finally opened it, it didn't slice like a knife. It thudded heavy and dull. To the elder sister of the bride. Not Madeline. Not Maddie. Just a placeholder. A role. A silhouette in the background. My phone buzzed. Mom. Flashing across the screen like a warning sign. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice followed seconds later, saccharine and shallow. "Hi, darling. I hope you got the invitation. Samantha's so excited, bless her heart. Just try not to overdo it this time, okay? No speeches, no tech talk, and please wear something neutral. We don't want to distract from the bride." My jaw locked. I replayed the message once. Then again. She didn't even say my name either. Across the kitchen, Chloe typed silently on her tablet. She hadn't looked up once, but I knew she'd heard every word. Her silence wasn't indifference, it was strategy. Chloe never reacted unless it served a purpose. "We're scheduled to finalize the CrossTech agreement on Friday," she said. "Draft looks solid. $75 million order to go out the day after the wedding." I sipped my espresso. "Remind me who signed on CrossTech's end." She looked up now. Just briefly. "Daniel Cross, co-CEO. Of course. The man who once laughed in my face during my seed round pitch. 6 years ago, I'd walked into his conference room with trembling fingers and a vision of edge-accelerated AI modules for medtech. I left humiliated 15 minutes later, carrying the stench of condescension and the sting of his words. This feels like sci-fi wish casting. Come back when you're building something real. He hadn't known then that I already was. He hadn't even asked. I turned toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. Boston sprawled beyond the Charles River, slicing clean through its heart. The city buzzed with ambition startups clawing for Series A corporations eating each other alive. And NovaCore, my company, preparing for the most aggressive IPO in its sector since Tesla. No one at CrossTech knew I owned NovaCore. That was by design. The shell firms, the proxy directors, Chloe had made sure the paperwork led everywhere and nowhere. The face of NovaCore was a venture consortium. The brain, me, always me. But to them, I was the elder sister, a plus one, a background player at my sister's wedding. "I'll go," I said quietly. Chloe looked up. "To the wedding?" I nodded. "And I'll sign the CrossTech contract, but only once I've had a good seat." Chloe arched a brow. "You know you don't need to be there, Maddie. They don't deserve you in that room." "That's exactly why I'm going." Later that night, after everyone left NovaCore's war room, I returned home, poured a glass of Bordeaux, and unlocked the safe embedded behind my wardrobe mirror. Inside was the original Novacore Incorporation folder, thick with filings, notarized documents, patent drafts, and the first wire transfer receipts. My name was nowhere visible on the top layers, but if someone peeled far enough, they'd see the truth. Madeline Grant, sole founder, primary shareholder, vision architect. The IPO prospectus was nearly ready. Once public, the headlines would flood in. But I didn't want fame. I wanted history to remember who built the machine they all relied on. Chloe messaged me from her apartment. Everything is queued. CrossTech won't know who hit them until it's too late. You sure you want to wait until the wedding? I stared at the message, then replied, let them show their cards first. I want to see where they seat me. The next morning, Samantha sent a group message to the family. So thrilled for this next chapter. Thank you all for your love and support. Please bring joy, not drama. I smiled, not out of amusement, out of precision. They wanted no drama, I was bringing truth. As I tucked the invitation into my bag alongside the sealed CrossTech contract, I caught Chloe's reflection in the mirrored backsplash behind me. She crossed her arms. Are you going to let them humiliate you again? I zipped the bag shut. No. I'm going to let them seat me. And then I'll take the table. The valet didn't recognize my name. That was expected. The planner didn't either. That was deliberate. I handed over the keys to my Aston Martin with a half smile, watching the teenager hesitate, scanning his clipboard again. It might be under Madeline Grant, I offered dryly. He blinked, then forced a nod and took the car. No ticket. No acknowledgement. Just to slip into invisibility, the role they preferred me in. The estate loomed ahead, wrapped in marble and roses and money. Beacon Hill at its most grotesquely perfect. String quartets tuned beneath arched trellises. Champagne towers sparkled against the midday sun. The Cross family mansion had been transformed into something out of a bridal magazine's fever dream. I walked alone up the drive, my heels silent on the stone. No one turned. Or if they did, it was to whisper, eyes darting, lips pursed. Isn't that the one who dropped out of Columbia? She had some tech startup that flopped right. No, I think she's in Dubai now. Or dating an art dealer. Something odd. The murmurs trailed behind me like silk scarves. I moved through them like wind. Samantha found me first. Of course she did. She descended from the top steps like a vision in cream lace, every inch of her screaming, curated bliss. Her smile widened as if greeting an old fan. Maddie. She air-kissed, barely grazing my cheek. So glad you made it. I know this isn't really your thing. I smiled back, precise and cold. Weddings or public erasure? Her brows lifted. Still quick with the zingers. She took my hand for a beat too long, twisting it into something performative. Daniel's dying to say hi. He wasn't, but there he was, emerging with practiced ease from a cluster of laughing groomsmen. Daniel Cross, still handsome in a boardroom sort of way, all chin and calculation. Madeline, he said smoothly, as if recalling a charity donor. Still in tech, or was it real estate? Defense contracts, actually. I replied, letting the edge in. His smirk faltered just enough. The wedding coordinator interrupted. Ms. Grant, your table placement. I followed her across the lawn, past mirrored centerpieces and floral arches, until we reached a forgotten slice of shade behind the catering tent. Table 19, white cloth, 2 seats, one already taken by a bored teenager scrolling Instagram. The kitchen door swung behind us, letting out blasts of roasted duck and burnt butter. I sat. The cold metal of the folding chair bit through my dress. From here I could see the entire wedding, but like an outsider pressed against the glass. Samantha floated from guest to guest like she'd been born with a spotlight overhead. Mom was perched at the family table, looking elegant and exhausted in equal measure. She waved at me briefly, then returned to adjusting her pearls. No name card. No acknowledgement. Just a clear message. We put you near the door where the servers come and go. Take the hint. I placed my clutch on the table, opened it. Inside my phone glowing with Novacore's back-end dashboard, Chloe had updated the UI again. The purchase order column shimmered with fresh ink, CrossTech's bulk request for AI-integrated sensor modules. A week ago, they begged for a priority queue. Today, Daniel stood on stage toasting their unshakable future. "I can assure you all," he said, raising his glass, "that CrossTech is entering a new age. Our upcoming alliance guarantees we're 10 years ahead of the curve. You'll want to invest early." Applause, champagne refills, more applause. I refreshed the dashboard. Order Juror XC 247B. Pending CEO signature. My fingerprint was the final gate. Behind me, the kitchen door slammed. A server nearly clipped my shoulder, muttering an apology that wasn't meant to be heard. I smiled. Let them bask. Let them gloat. Let them believe I was sitting in humiliation. They didn't know this was the most dangerous position of all, the seat near the exits. A buzz. "Chloe." "CrossTech CFO just arrived. Do you want me to initiate phase 1? I looked out at the glowing faces, the perfect veneer, then typed back, "Wait, let them serve the cake first." They gave me a seat near the servers, so I served them a contract cancellation right between vows and dessert. The string quartet shifted into a syrupy rendition of Ed Sheeran as Samantha floated down the garden aisle, bouquet, trembling with curated sincerity. I watched from my corner by the kitchen, picking at overcooked asparagus, the scent of buttercream and burnt lamb wafting through the swing doors behind me. I was the ghost of the Grant family, apparently present but blurred. Invisible unless I made noise. Today I wouldn't need to. At precisely 3:46 p.m., my phone vibrated once. "Chloe. Novacore backend locked. All CrossTech orders frozen. Phase 1 complete." Across the lawn, Daniel lifted a glass of rosé, whispering something smug to Mr. Alvarez, CrossTech's CFO, who gave a tight-lipped chuckle. Beside them, Samantha beamed at a photographer lifting her dress just so. She always knew her angles. I slipped my phone back into my clutch and stood. The crowd buzzed with wine and too much floral perfume. Toasts were beginning. A cousin was stammering something about childhood memories and true love conquering VC rounds. Samantha dabbed at imaginary tears. Daniel smiled like a senator. And I walked toward the center tent. No one noticed at first. Or perhaps they thought I was going to the restroom. But then the side screens flickered soft at first, then hard cut. The Novacore logo bloomed in clean white and electric blue across every projection surface. Crisp, corporate, impossible to ignore. Whispers broke like a wave. Daniel turned confused. Samantha's eyes narrowed. I didn't take the microphone. I didn't need one. The silence had weight. "I'm Madeline Grant," I said, voice even. "Founder and CEO of Novacore." A ripple of disbelief swept through the guests. Someone gasped audibly. "Effective immediately, Novacore will cease all deliveries and terminate contracts with CrossTech, citing breach of fiduciary ethics and internal misconduct." Daniel stepped forward, face flushing. "What the hell is this?" I extended a slim folder. "The email chain you sent your offshore partner in Luxembourg detailing how you funneled R&D funds into a shell firm registered under your cousin's name. You used our IP as leverage." Alvarez paled. "Daniel, tell me this isn't—" I cut in. "Check your inbox, Mr. Alvarez. SEC and IRS received the same documents 3 minutes ago." Daniel lunged. I didn't flinch. Just stepped back, raising my wrist where the Novacore token bracelet blinked green. "Touch me," I said calmly, and I trigger a formal securities fraud alert to every investor on the NYSE. His hand froze in midair. Behind him, Samantha looked like porcelain left in the sun too long. Her jaw clenched, her bouquet limp. "You married him for power," I said to her. "For the image. Well, here's the headline. He'll take it all down with him." Susan stood now, trembling in place, her voice shrill and thin. "You're ruining everything. This was supposed to be perfect." I turned to her. "You made it perfect for everyone but me." Silence. Thick. Stretching. Even the waitstaff stopped moving. And then the screens flickered again, this time displaying Novacore's dashboard contracts marked terminated delivery statuses, halted. The guests' tech investors, socialites, journalists, all understood what that meant. Behind me, a quiet voice buzzed in my ear. Chloe. Bloomberg just picked it up. You're trending. I exhaled slowly, turning to face the cluster of frozen faces, the 1,000-yard stares, the hollow champagne flutes. Good, I whispered. Now they'll spell my name right. When my mother barged into the side parlor, I expected fury. What I saw instead was fear, and that was new. She stumbled in like a gust of perfume and panic. Susan Grant, flawless, elegant, and for the first time in my life, rattled. Behind her, Walter trailed with half-tied cufflinks and the kind of dazed expression that usually follows a market crash. I sat in the high-back chair near the fireplace, one leg crossed, Novacore's live PR dashboard glowing on my tablet. Chloe's voice fed calmly into my earpiece, parsing hashtags and click-throughs like a surgeon reading vital signs. Mom's heels clicked across the tile. What have you done? I didn't look up. Neutralized a liability. Walter spoke next. You humiliated your sister on her wedding day. No, I replied, finally meeting his eyes. I stopped pretending she didn't humiliate me every other day. Susan reached for the decanter on the sideboard, hand trembling. Maddie, the press is outside. Guests are leaving. Do you understand what you've done to this family? Which part? I asked. The one that forgot I existed, or the one that invited me as the elder sister instead of using my name? Silence. Outside, through the thin glass, camera shutters clicked in sequence like gunfire. A CNN van rolled up the driveway. I watched the red light on their roof begin to pulse. Walter tried again, soft now. We should have handled things better, I see that. But this scorched earth stunt, it doesn't solve anything. It solves $75 million in damages CrossTech was about to cause Novacore, I said, pulling a folder from my bag and placing it on the table between us. And it solves the question of whether I'll let history repeat itself. Susan didn't open the folder, but I could see her flinch at the embossed seal. It's a breakdown, I continued. Outstanding invoices, delivery hold fees, contract exit clauses. $8 million CrossTech owes us. Payable in 24 hours unless renegotiated. Walter stepped forward, jaw tightening. This is blackmail. No, I said calmly. It's business, something Daniel Cross pretended to understand. He stiffened. I turned the page. We also now control 38.4% of your supplier chain. If you think your board won't call for restructuring by Monday, you're welcome to wait and see. Susan's voice cracked. You would really destroy your own sister's future like this. I paused. You remember when I was 10 and I asked for a typewriter instead of a birthday dress? I said softly. You told me I was being dramatic, that no man would want a girl with ink under her fingernails. She blinked. The memory hit like a slap. I spent 14 years building Novacore without a single phone call from this room. I continued, tone sharper now. No support, no congratulations, just silence. And you all assumed it meant surrender. Walter sat down heavily in the chair across from me. Madeline, this is your family. I leaned forward. Family only matters when they remember you exist. I built Novacore without a single phone call from this room. No one moved. No one breathed. And then Chloe's voice buzzed in my ear, low and precise. SEC just flagged CrossTech under review. The first headline reads, "The CEO They Forgot." 3 weeks after the wedding, Samantha walked into my office, not with makeup or diamonds, but with hollow eyes and a tote bag. She didn't knock. She never used to need permission, and perhaps some parts of her still believed she didn't. But this wasn't her world. Not anymore. I looked up from my screen where Chloe had just dropped the finalized audit summary from CrossTech. There was a stillness in the air, filtered sunlight washing over the Novacore logo etched into the glass wall. It reflected perfectly onto the conference table, empty, save for one cream-colored folder in the center. Samantha stood there, spine crooked under the weight of something invisible. No designer heels. No perfect waves in her hair. Just canvas flats, dark circles, and a too large cardigan swallowing her frame. She sat without asking. I said nothing. Neither did Chloe, who merely tapped the side of her tablet taking notes, silently gaze like steel behind her glasses. I didn't know where else to go. Samantha began, voice barely louder than the hum of the AC. "You're here," I said evenly. She reached into her tote and placed something on the table, a wedding photo. Her and Daniel Champagne flutes raised her smile, frozen in porcelain brilliance. She didn't look at it. "I found out after the honeymoon," she whispered. "The investors he invited, they weren't real. Half of them were loan sharks. He took out bridge financing in my name. The prenup doesn't cover everything." I leaned back in my chair. "He used me," she continued. "Told me the wedding was just optics. Said I could keep the ring and pretend. I told him I wanted to leave." He laughed. I didn't flinch. I had already imagined this scene 100 times. In some, she cried. In others, she yelled. But none of them had her looking like this, undone. "You married him for validation," I said, voice low. "You thought his spotlight would finally blind people to mine?" Her head snapped up. "They always said you were strange," she blurted. "Too intense, too cold? I just wanted to be normal, safe." "Safety isn't truth," I replied. "It's armor, and armor rusts." She blinked, and for a second I thought she might snap. Scream. Hurl the photo. But instead her shoulders sagged further. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I don't know if that matters." "You don't owe me an apology," I said, standing and picking up the cream folder. "You owe yourself one." Her eyes followed as I signed the last page inside the termination notice. CrossTech's exclusive rights to Novacore's supply chain are null. The review period is over. If they want a future, they'll have to earn it. A soft breath escaped her lips. Relief or resignation, I couldn't tell. I didn't reach across the table. I didn't offer forgiveness, but I didn't twist the knife either. She stood slowly. "Will you ever speak to Mom again?" "Maybe," I said, "when she uses my name." Samantha gave a brittle smile. "I used to think you were cold. And now I think you survived." She left the photo behind. I slid it into the folder without a word. Chloe looked up from her screen, her voice the same calm edge it always was. "Forbes just confirmed it. You're in the top 10 women in tech front cover." I didn't smile, just tapped the empty space behind my chair. They should have put the kitchen table behind me. They seated me by the kitchen because they thought I didn't belong. That table now sits in my office, and it's reserved for founders. It was positioned in the corner, unassuming the wood scuffed one leg uneven. The same table I sat at while waiters dodged behind me with trays of salmon and champagne. I had it delivered to Novacore the day after the wedding, stripped of its linens wiped clean of condescension. Now it stood under a spotlight on the 42nd floor, just past the curved glass hallway that bore the logo, the Back Table Fund. Plaques lined the wall, each name etched in brushed steel. Talia Ramos, Noor Jenkins, Aisha DuPont. Former interns, former baristas, all funded, all underestimated, all winning. I ran my fingers along the latest application, the text glowing faintly on my tablet. Her pitch wasn't perfect, but the grit was undeniable. "Built my first app on a borrowed Chromebook," she wrote. "No one took me seriously, not even my mom." I smiled. Outside the glass doors, the floor buzzed with quiet purpose. Teams clustered around whiteboards, ideas flying. Most of them were women. Many were Black trans immigrant survivors. The kind of people corporate America put at the kids' table if they were invited at all. Chloe passed by my office, now wearing heels I'd never seen her in before, sharp as her gaze. "MIT wants a final draft of your keynote tonight," she said, tapping her watch. "You're closing the summit." I nodded, setting aside the tablet. On my desk, half buried under files, was an envelope I hadn't touched in weeks. Cream-colored, elegant handwriting. My mother's. I peeled it open. Inside was a short letter. No flowers, no guilt, no performances. It said, I was wrong. I see you now. I hope one day you'll let me learn who you've become. Folded within it, a linen napkin, hand-embroidered. My name, Madeline. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I reached into my drawer, pulled out a manila envelope, and slid in the NovaCore IPO cover my photo bold and clear name, centered in serif font. On top, a single Post-it. This time I wrote my own invitation. I sealed it, left it on Chloe's desk with a note, no rush, just someday. That night, I stood before a theater full of engineers, founders, skeptics. My alma mater, MIT. My audience, mostly female. Many had faces that once sat across interview tables and were told, you don't quite fit. I cleared my throat and spoke from the gut. If they won't give you a seat at the table, build one. Then leave the door open. The applause was quiet at first, then thunderous. Back at headquarters, the sun had set. I stepped into my office alone, heels clicking against polished stone. Chloe waited, arms folded, eyes soft. Are you sure you want to keep the old kitchen chair? I looked at it, the metal scratched the cushion, slightly frayed. It reminds me where the real power sits. They say weddings are about beginnings. For me, it was closure. When I sat by the kitchen, ignored by waitstaff, misnamed by planners, and photographed like a distant cousin, I felt every inch of their dismissal. But I also felt something else resolve. The kind of cold, deliberate clarity that only comes when you've been erased so thoroughly there's nothing left to lose. What they didn't know was that while they curated chandeliers and canapes, I was designing a kill switch. While they stitched Samantha into satin and silenced my name from the seating chart, I was drafting clauses and contingencies. When they laughed, I documented. When they condescended, I consolidated. And when they underestimated, I built. The day I terminated CrossTech's contract wasn't just about revenge. It was about restoration of power, of name, of memory. I wasn't there to scream. I was there to sign. To deliver a truth that didn't need microphones. Just timing, receipts, and restraint. I remember my mother's face not twisted in anger, but hollow with fear. For once, she wasn't performing. She was realizing that silence had never been my weakness. It was the strategy she failed to read. That behind every quiet nod I had been recording, structuring, founding. That every insult came with an interest rate, and the bill had arrived. And Samantha? She walked in weeks later, not as the bride, but as a woman undone. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't need to, because I didn't need to give it. I had already chosen something better distance. Not the kind that fuels resentment, but the kind that protects dignity. Now the table they gave me sits in my corner office not as a trophy, but as a reminder. That being sidelined doesn't mean being small. That being overlooked doesn't mean being unworthy. And that sometimes the kitchen door is the entrance to your own empire. And perhaps the real lesson wasn't just mine. Because somewhere out there, someone is being silenced. Someone is sitting at a table they didn't choose, surrounded by people who pretend not to see them. But what this story reminds us is that the seat they give you doesn't define your story, what you build from it does. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it walks in with a document folder, a calm voice, and a company seal. It doesn't need fireworks, it just needs facts. And if told right, even the quietest name will echo louder than 1,000 toasts. Because when the powerful forget your name, the smartest thing you can do is make them spell it in headlines. If you've ever been given the wrong seat at the table or no seat at all, remember that doesn't mean you don't belong there. It just means it's time to build your own. Thank you for watching, for staying until the end, and for choosing quiet strength over noise. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below. Share your own story, your own quiet victories. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this about truth power and the moments we finally say our own name, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Until next time, stay steady, stay sharp, and never let anyone else decide where your story ends.